What's going on, guys? Boom Addicts, and I'm the host of the Who's Your Agent podcast. The first episode went really, really well, and we're super excited to bring you this next episode. And it's actually a team member of Kyle Tucker's. Today we have in our seat Adrian Maco. Adrian has been an agent for a while now, but I met him just over 2 years ago. There are very few people that I have talked to, that I have interviewed, that I have spent time around, that I can genuinely say care about what they do as much as Adrian does. He's an unbelievable agent with an awesome background, and I love the focus that he gives in this episode about what it was that pushed him into real estate. I think that you'll really get to know him, and if you were looking to buy or sell a house, I would always recommend Adrian Maco if you're asking yourself, who's your agent? Without further ado, Adrian Maco. Adrian Maco.
Boom Addicts.
Appreciate you coming on, man.
I'm super excited to be here, bro.
You're guest number 2 for us on the Who's Your Agent podcast.
Number 2. Should have been number 1, right? But
I know, but that's okay. We don't have to get into it.
Had a little mix-up yesterday with my
schedule.
No,
that's okay, though. I tried to make you number 1. You know that.
I know. You're my guy. Thank you.
Well, we're super excited to have you. Seriously. I get to interact with a lot of agents, and I think one of the things that I kind of want to reiterate with this podcast is part of my motivation for starting this is that there's 28,000 active agents right now in the state of Utah.
Way too many.
It's a lot, right? And so the goal for me is to help interview and show off and showcase who I think some of the top agents are in the state. For sure. And you fit that mold through and through. So we're super excited to have you here, and we're super grateful for you joining us.
Thank you, man. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, of course. So let's get, I always want to start at the beginning when we do this.
Yeah.
I think the frame of mind where you were and kind of what pushed you to starting into real estate is super, super important for somebody to understand when they're looking to hire a new agent. So go into that just a little bit for us and kind of go through some of those early details.
So I've been in sales for a really long time. I learned early on that I was a good salesperson. And, you know, that really came from my desire to really help people, right? Help people make an informed decision and help them with whatever I was trying to sell them or whatever, right? So early on, I noticed I did that at a high level, and I think it's because I truly cared about people, listened to their concerns, what they were needing, and then provided value and helped them, point them in the right direction, right? So I did phone sales for a while, actually. It was credit repair. I would sell.
It's tough.
I was there for like 3 years.
Wow.
It is a tough sell. Selling over the phone, it's a lot harder to make an emotional connection with someone versus in person.
Is that important for you? Or do you feel like that's part of the process? Like, is that...
Yeah,
because we're 30 seconds in now, and you've brought up helping people, and you've brought up making an emotional connection, right? So obviously, I think that's a very important part of your process.
That's my number one goal with every person I talk to and meet. Whether you buy a house this month, in 6 months, in 12 months, or in 5 years, I want to leave a lasting impression and provide value to you, and be able to think back and be like, okay, when I talked to Adrian, he cared, he listened, he gave me a lot of value, so I'm going to call him when it's time.
And I know a little bit about you, right? I sat next to was it your parents at your wedding?
Yeah.
I sat next to your parents at your wedding. I think I know the answer to this, but I do want to know a little bit more about that. Where do you think that comes from? Where do you, like that love, that like warm, that passion I think that you have to making this a positive experience for people?
I think it's just, I don't know. I've always wanted to help people even early on. I was the kid in elementary school that stood up to the bullies.
Yeah.
You know, so I've always wanted to lift people up, help them the best way that I can, and it's what I was raised to do with my family too. You know, look out for my little sisters, even look out for my older sister. She was older than me, but I was, you know, a big brown buff guy. So that was always my calling, is to help the little guy or help the people around me as much as I can. So yeah.
So then something wasn't working for you in phone sales, and you're like, okay, you know what, I got to find something else.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, I feel like any position that I've left and then gone to something different, I didn't leave because I was doing poor. I left because I was wanting more, right? So I was one of the top sales agents there selling credit repair over the phone, but I was kind of just yearning for more. So I was looking into selling something bigger. I remember talking to my supervisor at the time. He was like, do you want to, move up? Do you want to be in my job? I was like, no, I don't want to do your job. I want to sell something bigger. So I looked into like software sales, maybe stuff like that. And actually went on hiatus for about 2 years. I left that job. For 2 years, I went and helped start a company. And I helped my buddy develop the sales department of it, because that's what I know, sales, right? So I helped write the scripts. We were doing phone sales also over the phone, because that's all I knew. But during that time, I also learned a lot of skills that helped me with my future real estate business, how to be self-accountable, how to start a business, processes, prospecting, showing up every day and being like, okay, how am I going to build this company? Because when you've got a very defined role in a corporate job, 9 to 5, it's, you know what your job is that day. You show up, you do it effectively. You're done at 5. It's over.
And as part of that, there's a lot of things that you don't have to think about, even though they are very much still a part of the sales process. You don't necessarily have to think about it because your number one focus is the sale, right?
Right, exactly. So I learned a ton there, and during that time, I was still didn't have that fulfillment of selling something bigger or doing a bigger sale, but I was learning a lot that would help me prepare to do that. So there were a few other people in that company that were getting their real estate license or doing it part-time or something, and I just decided to jump, and I got my real estate license. I joined a small team in Utah County, and I quit that startup. It was kind of swindling anyway, or it was going away. But and I quit with $500 in my bank account. Didn't have a lot of money, and I got a deal in my first month. So that was, which. There is a little luck behind that, but
there's a lot of luck behind this.
There's a lot of luck behind that, but it also, I want to credit, the fact that I've had that desire to help people and want to, do more and sell something bigger. So that very first month, it was sink or swim for me. I had $500 in my bank account, and if I didn't sell something and make money, couldn't make a car payment, couldn't make a rent payment. It was definitely something that I had no choice, right? So
which isn't necessarily a bad place to be.
It's not.
Right? Like and I think that the older that you get, the more fearful that situation can become, right? But you're still young. You're 28 now.
Yeah.
28 now. How old were you when you switched over?
To real estate, 24.
Okay, so you've been in it for 4 years now.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit earlier on about how you structured your business with that startup.
Right.
Run us through, for anybody that's listening and thinking about hiring you as an agent, what does your business look like? What have you put into place? What have you, as you've developed as a real estate agent over the last 4 years, and you've moved a lot of transactions,
right.
What have you done to I think two things? Number one, to help make sure that your business can continue to grow.
Right.
But then number two, to make sure that the parts of this that made you get into it, right? That love and that wanting to help people.
Right.
What have you put into place to make sure that you don't lose that?
Right. So aside from my processes, I mean, I've again involved a lot from that one deal I got in my first month to 4 years later. I've now done over 150 deals. Right. A lot has changed, but I've also kept a lot of the core things in my business. Things that have changed is, I've joined the #1 real estate team in Salt Lake. They support me in many ways and processes, and I have an assistant now, personal assistant that helps me keep things organized and together. I've got a team backing me with different technology and support, and so it's a big team now. But one thing I will never change is worrying about the consumer experience, basically, and making sure that they're getting also personalized attention, because a lot of times that I've seen is when you systemize things a little too much, then you're kind of just throwing everyone into your system. But with real estate, especially, transactions can be so different and clients can be so different that you also need to be able to be adaptable a little, right? So I always make sure that even though I'm throwing them in this big machine that I've built now that I know is effective and helps me, make things as smooth as possible, I'm not afraid to step in and change something or call an audible to make my client's experience or a little better.
Yeah, and I think calling an audible, especially in the changing market that we find ourselves in today, is super, super important, whether it's dealing with appraisals, whether it's dealing with anything that needs to be repaired on the house, like closing costs, interest rates adjusting right now. I got a call from a buyer earlier this week that they were locked in at 4%. The lender told them to let that lock expire because he can get it for cheaper, and it jumped to 4.875.
No.
Right? Like, there's so many things that change in the market, and I think it's so important, and a lot of real estate agents that get into this to be quote unquote their own boss.
Right.
They don't take the time to put those systems into place
so
that everything else is controlled, and you're not stressing those things that you can't, and then you can actually attack them when that opportunity or that I call it an opportunity because I love it, right? Because I think that that's when you can show off who you are as an agent.
Yeah.
But I think that those systems are super important to have in place in order to call audibles.
Exactly. And then you just focus on those specific situations. But if you get a transaction that is textbook from A to B, then it's just a smooth transaction, right? But yeah, it's important to be adaptable there for sure.
Yeah. So going into it a little bit more, it bugs me when agents say, well, I work with everybody. I'm good with anybody. If you have anybody that is looking to buy or sell a house, tell me who, like, have them call me. But I think that there's also people that we find ourselves the most comfortable with, the people that, like, for us, the clients that we really, really enjoy working with. And not only that, but we find ourselves to be really, really good at working with those people.
Right.
Walk us through what some of those avatars look like, what some of those people look like in your business, so that if that person is listening to this, who is it that should absolutely be calling Adrian Maco to buy or sell their house?
I think it's people who are genuinely curious and ready to be informed of what's going on in the market, because the market changes week over week, right? The market we're at today, back in February, completely different, and so on and so forth. It's incredibly difficult to try to help someone that is just believing all the social media hype or the headlines that they see, and then you come at them and try to explain to them from experience and from data to our local market of, this is actually what's happening, this is what's getting things done, this is things to avoid, these are things to take into consideration. So if I've got someone who's truly and genuinely curious and ready to learn and let me guide them, hold their hand, if you will, through this process, that's my ideal client. Like that, it's someone who's willing to ride this wave with me and trust me that I know how to get them from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible.
Would you say that's part of caring for somebody in the way that you run your business? Being able to speak honestly and candidly and openly with them, does that kind of go into that category 100%. For you?
I've talked to my clients out of deals, or out of submitting offers on homes, or not accepting a certain offer that was submitted on our listing, because it's in their best interest, right? And I think that's what resonates the most with my clients is whenever I'm out there negotiating or showing homes or calling buyers agents or lenders for them with wherever we're at in the transaction, I have their best interest in mind 100%. So when I come back to them and say, boo, so I talked to this person and that person based on X, Y, and Z, I honestly think this is the best option for you. I'm going to explain these other to you, and then you make a decision for yourself, but at least you're making an informed decision now, right? So yeah, I think my clients appreciate that, just because I'm not just here to sell you a house. I'm here to make sure that you don't regret this decision, Yeah,
and I think that actually segues really, really nicely, because I always love to follow it up with, okay, now I know who your ideal client is. Mm-hmm. What do you do as an individual or as an agent? Like I said, you're one of 28,000.
Right.
There are 4,000 active listings currently on the market, 4,200 or so. Mm-hmm. So there's one listing for every 8 agents that are out there.
Yeah.
What would you say that you do differently, right? I don't like to use the word better because it's not even a competition, right? What would you say, though, that you do differently to give your clients the best chance at buying or selling a house currently?
So that's exactly what I think helps me stand out and why I've had so much success in this difficult market that we've been in the last 2 years. And it has been difficult in some ways, but it's not unmanageable.
Yeah, tell me why you put that in air quotes.
Because it's not impossible either. It's about pivoting, right? That's why some people were like, oh, if the market crashes, you're out of a job. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just pivoting. My whole business is just pivoting, right? So when
it's calling an audible.
It's being adaptable. Yeah. So if you can't be adaptable to a market that is always changing, you're not going to survive, right? So I think that's one of my biggest strengths is adaptability. It's my entire life has been an audible. What
does that mean?
I just, growing up, we moved around a lot. I've never had a ton of stability. I was a kid that barely graduated high school on my own since I was 16. Like, my life has been always just kind of on the fly, figuring it out, making the most of the situation. So when the market, turns and things get crazy, it's like, okay, well, things have kind of always been crazy for me. How do I figure this out? How do I come out on top, right? And that's what I'm good at doing with my clients is I sold 50 homes last year.
Which is impressive, by the way.
Thank you. And I'm proud of that. And I honestly, truly believe it's because of my knowledge of the contracts. You'll be surprised how many of those 28,000 real estate agents know how to fill out a contract, but they have no idea what's in the contract, which can help your client, hurt your client, or you could do something that's not in their best interest.
I've attended meetings with you guys and been kind of that fly on the wall with the Perry Group, and you guys go over verbiage and contracts.
Yeah.
I mean, down to the word, right? You guys, and we'll sit there and have a 10 or a 15-minute conversation on if that's actually the best word that should be being used in that sentence, right? You guys are that specific and that exact with it.
Exactly. And you have to be. I mean, it's a legally binding contract. Someone has hired you to be their representative through probably their biggest purchase they'll ever make in their life. And you don't know what, Section 3 of the real estate purchase contract says, right? So it's about knowing your contract, but it's a combination of something else too. Because a lot of agents know the contracts, but they don't have a single bone in their body of how to negotiate.
Well, yeah, because there's two sides to knowing the contract, right? There's knowing the things to watch out for. There's knowing the things to be like, oh, we don't want to get caught with that. But then there's also ways that you can take, I don't want to say take advantage because that sounds bad. Yeah, leverage the negotiation, right? Because
100%.
Ultimately it's your client that you're representing. It is your job to get them the best deal.
100%.
End of story.
And I can't tell you how many times I have used that contract to the advantage or exposed an agent for not knowing their contract when they send me an offer. And I'm like, yeah, you should sign this.
Yeah,
because they didn't do this, and this. He didn't notice this. So as long as everything's checks out, you should take this off.
Well, I mean, yeah, like in the last year, just look at some of the ways that the contract has not changed because the contract is by and large stayed the same.
The way it was written,
the verbiage and stuff that is being used, it's waiving appraisals, it's X amount of dollars over ask up to this, but you can when you start getting technical like that, you can get caught with your hand in the cookie jar quick.
Exactly. So you have to think very critically and strategically, but then also there's liability behind being a little risky, right?
Does that make you nervous?
No, I mean,
because that's part of the transaction, right? And anybody that's transacting in this market, it's not. We've done transactions together, right? And it's not even that you are. It's not risky. It's not like the buyers are putting themselves in a bad situation, but it's different than it was 2 years ago.
Right. Totally. Exactly. So I think it's about just educating your client and explaining that risk. I call it's calculated risk. Okay. They need to know the outcome of every possible scenario. So I bring my buyer an offer and saying, guys, there's 10 other offers. I think this is where we're at. This is where we need to be as far as terms go. If X, Y, and Z happens, this is what happens, right? If everything goes great, then we get the house, right? So you just need to be okay with the worst case scenario, but then also don't let that scare you because there's also a best case scenario. Is that you trying to talk them out
when you're running them through the worst case scenario? Like
sometimes
if you're not okay with this consequence,
sometimes it talks them out.
We need to bail right now.
100%. And then it always goes back to also none of this matters unless you love the home.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if this home, I tell my clients,
which I think people really have. I don't want to say forgotten, but I if I had to guess, I would say that more people in the last 2 years have got into their house, moved in, and the process was so exhausting to get through that they get into their house and they're like, we don't love this. So I think that's super important to maintain in the process right now.
Right.
Because that was kind of the first thing to go when prices started going up like crazy. It was like, okay, you don't love it, but do you like it enough to submit an offer?
Right.
Right. Because that's what the market was doing. So I think bringing it back to that is just is huge.
It is huge because then I tell them that's how aggressive I'm going to go. If this house is a 6 out of 10, I'm going to write you a 6 out of 10 offer. If this is a 10 out of 10, if I lose this house, I'm out. Then I'm going to write you a 10 out of 10
That's
offer.
part. You got to have a relationship with the buyers though, because buyer frenzy in the market is a very real thing, right?
Totally. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's why I've had so much success is being able to know the contract, being able to use the contract in my client's favor to leverage as much possible for them and helping them win. And that's what really gets me like high, you know, like that's, getting the deal, closing the deal, that's fine and all. But like when you get into a negotiation, whether that's up front, in the middle of the transaction, or at the very end, and you come out on top because the way you wrote your contract or the way they wrote theirs and you school them, it's like, you just look like amazing to your clients, right? And I know, and that's my big thing. I want to be an advocate for my client and make sure that I'm never going to advise them to do something I would never do myself.
All right, and you're currently investing in the market like as we're speaking.
Yeah, I'm building with Edge Homes.
Yes.
Just picked up a new townhome. Yeah, just picked up a new townhome in Mountain Ridge, that Harriman community. It's booming.
That's your second one.
Second one, yeah. Well, third, I sold one.
That's right.
But second one that I'll have. So,
well, we've kind of got into it a little bit. We've got into it a little bit about who makes you,
right?
Specific to real estate, though, right? The loving, the caring, the paying attention. But I think also you are somebody that puts in the time. Sure. You're I've heard you play the piano. Like, so talk us through some of the things in your life that you would say you put in the time with that are equally important to you.
first and foremost, my relationship with my wife. I think, like you said, it's everything that's worthwhile doing takes time, right? And isn't easy either, right? It's about putting in the reps and putting in the time. So, building a relationship with my wife has been huge with me, and she's very important to me. So you need to make time to do that. It's time blocking basically, right? Time blocking. A lot of people say time blocking for business aspects, but I do it for my personal life now too, because I have so much going on in my business. So I time block time for me and my wife. I time block time to play piano because I'm really passionate about that. And, I try to do it as much as possible and stay consistent. So then I feel a sense of achievement, with that. And then just my mental health too. I had therapy Friday mornings at 10 a.m. And that's been a huge game changer for me and just my mental state. And it helps. It's helped. And if you can have that also balanced, it's going to help your business at the same time. Because it's easy to be unbalanced in this position, in this role.
For sure.
Well,
yeah, and when you don't have your boss and you don't have like the bumpers on you in life that says, okay, you're done at 5. And especially too, I think it's more than that. I think it's when you care as much as you do, when you take it as seriously as you do,
right?
You want to always be there, but always being there doesn't mean that you always answer your phone, I would say.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and it's hard because it's like, your business relies on, your clients having 24/7 availability to you. But at the same time, it's like, at what cost though?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If you're burned out and you miss something, that's a much worse scenario than you not answering your phone at 9 o'clock on something that could very easily wait until the next day.
And I'm at that point in my career. Luckily, I will say to new agents that are listening to this, your first 2 years is going to be that.
Yeah.
So tell your wife. It
has to be almost.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah.
You have to put in the time and the work. And then if you do everything right in those 2 years and you build a business that, promotes longevity and sustainability and you're doing things right, then at that time you're like, okay, now I'm actually going to choose my schedule. Now I'm only available 9 to 9. That's kind of my hours, 9 to 9. Before then, I'm not hitting you back unless it's urgent, always adaptable, right?
Yeah.
But, and after 9 p.m., if I don't have to text you back, it's not urgent, I'll let you know tomorrow at 9,
So you and I have sold a couple of houses together. And I think one of the things that I always tell buyers, and you've heard me tell them this, the piece of advice I always give is that if you're not going to buy a house from me, just buy something.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to anybody that's listening? Right, I'm huge on creating value for people without expecting anything in return. Right. So create some value for anybody that might be listening in regards to real estate.
I literally just had this conversation with my sister last night, and it was that exact scenario. She doesn't live in Utah. It's just she's not going to use me. She lives in Ohio. And, I'm getting her in contact with all the right people out there, doing my research, making sure they're working with an experienced agent, experienced loan officer. But I was talking to her yesterday because they're a little scared. They're first-time home buyers, and they've been renters for a while. And I told them, I was like, Sonia, I'm not even telling you this because I'm a real estate agent or because, I've done it a million times before. Like, buy a house. Like, you're not going to regret it. You need to buy a house. It's what's going to be best for you and your family. You're going to have so much stability now. You don't have to keep leasing, dealing with landlords. And they were like, yeah, we're just worried about it all because, if like our furnace goes out, we don't have a landlord to call to go fix it, especially if you don't have that extra income to throw at emergencies like that can be scary. But I told them about a home warranty. They're like, wait, you can pay $400 or $500 a year every year and just renew that, and it's a home warranty on top of your insurance. I was like, yeah. And so that was like, blew her mind. And she's like, yeah, but you're signing up for a lot of, you're signing your life away, 300,000, 400,000, right? And over 30 years, I'm like, Sonia, no, you're not. Okay. You're signing up for a monthly payment. Okay. When's the last time you missed your rent payment? Never. You can pay your mortgage and pay your mortgage because you've been renting now for over 10 years and you get zero of that back.
Nothing's coming back.
Zero, nothing. Versus if you had 10 years into a mortgage, it's a pretty significant amount. So I was like, the train hasn't left yet. Get on, buy a house.
Just buy something.
Do it. Historically, it's one of the safest investments you can make.
And when people call real estate an investment, especially if it's for their own house, right? If they're going owner occupied, if they're buying their own place, I wouldn't even say it's an investment. It's a payment that you're going to have to make either way.
Right, exactly.
You're going to have some sort of a monthly payment, a living expense of some sort. the question is, do you want to put it into your bank account or do you want to put it into somebody else's?
Exactly.
There are pros to being a renter, right? You can have the flexibility to move every year if you want to. You can have somebody come and take care of your furnace going out. But here's what I've learned in this life is that nobody does anything for free. No. So if that guy's coming and replacing the furnace, it's because your extra rent payments every single month have made it so that it makes it worth it for them.
It's a great way to look at it. Yeah, 100%. So that's what I tell buyers out there. Just if you can buy, buy. If you can't buy because of income or where you're at in your career or credit, work on that, but have a goal to work towards that, because home ownership 99.99% of the time always beats renting.
Well, we appreciate the advice.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way? Text, call, Instagram, Facebook. We'll link all your info.
Yeah, you know how to find me.
Okay, appreciate you.
Thanks, Boo.
Thanks.